Oh man, nothing says PlayStation in the mid-90s like that intro. Resident Evil is probably my favourite video game series of all time. It's just got everything you could ever want in a game. Action, puzzles, monsters, betrayals, quirky characters, and interesting settings that are fun to explore. Over the past 20 years, the series has exploded in popularity to the point where it now covers video games, books, comics, movies, merchandise, and even fan conventions. So I thought I'd do a little retrospective series where I look back at the history of each game in the series, give some behind the scenes insights into how they were made, and my own opinions of their strengths and weaknesses. Ready? Good. Grab yourself a Jill sandwich and let's do this! Resident Evil was released onto the Sony PlayStation and the Sega Saturn in the summer of 1996. It was a survival horror game that puts you in the shoes of either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield, both members of an elite police unit called STARS operating out of Raccoon City. I could lay the plot out for you here, but instead I'll just let the main man Chris Redfield bring you up to speed.
Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City. There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. Bravo team went to the hideout of the group and disappeared.
Thanks, Chris. So it doesn't take long to find Bravo team's helicopter, and apparently things didn't work out well for them. Cue a sudden attack by mutated zombie dogs, shooting, running, helicopter leaves without you, more running, before the team finally retreats into a nearby mansion house to regroup, losing contact with one of their members along the way. This is where the awesome intro ends and you take control. Your mission is to track down your missing partner, find out what happened to Bravo team, round up any survivors and get out of Dodge with all your limbs still attached. Sounds simple enough, but the actual development of Resident Evil was anything but simple. The project began at Capcom in 1993, taking its inspiration from the earlier horror game Sweet Home made back in 1989. Shinji Mikami was initially commissioned to make a game set in a haunted mansion, just like Sweet Home, so Resident Evil would act as a kind of loose remake using superior graphics of the PlayStation. The similarities between the two games are pretty clear, and you can see that Resident Evil adopted many elements from Sweet Home, like inventory management, the mansion setting, the puzzles, the emphasis on survival and exploration, the door loading screens, the use of scattered notes and diary entries to tell the story, multiple endings depending on choices you made throughout the game, backtracking to previous locations, individual character items like lockpicks or lighters, and restoring health through items scattered around the mansion. What a lot of people don't know is that the game was initially planned as a 3D first-person action shooter. Very little is known about this aborted project, but we do know that Capcom's development team actually did produce a working prototype. Only one screenshot's ever been released for the game that never was, so we don't really know what it could have become if the project had been fully developed, but it's safe to say Resident Evil would have been a very different game if this had gone ahead. Unfortunately, it soon became clear that the PS1's hardware, which was pretty advanced for its time, just wasn't up to this ambitious plan, and development on the game struggled as a result. It was at this point that Shinji Mikami discovered Alone in the Dark, which persuaded him to go for a third-person static camera system with polygonal characters moving across pre-rendered backgrounds. This approach eliminated the hardware issues that the development team had struggled with and allowed them to focus on creating immersive, detailed environments that players would enjoy exploring. It also allowed the character and enemy models to be far more detailed and better animated. With the basic approach decided on, development quickly accelerated, but the game still went through several more prototypes before it was finished. Another version featured co-op gameplay, and early footage of this system was actually revealed in 1995. At this stage of development, a local co-op mode was present, along with different outfits for the main characters. A later demo made for the V-Jump Festival in 1995 featured real-time weapon changes, with the co-op mode removed this time and basic character models and textures. Another version featured a graveyard, guest houses and a large tower as part of the game world. All of these were eventually removed, although the graveyard would eventually be restored for the GameCube remake in 2002. The supporting characters were also different in these early versions. One African American member of the team named Dewey was intended to serve as comic relief. Another member was named Geltzer, and he was supposed to be a super strong cyborg character. Both of these were eventually dropped when Capcom decided to make the characters more grounded and realistic, and Dewey and Geltzer were replaced by Rebecca and Barry in the finished game. The live-action video sequences also proved to be problematic, as Western actors weren't in abundant supply in Japan at the time, and most of the cast they did manage to source had little or no acting experience. You'd never guess, would you?
Joseph!
They weren't helped by the fact that the development team had told them next to nothing about the project they were supposed to be acting in. The outdoor scenes were filmed at night, and the shoot was plagued by mosquitoes and lighting problems. The actress playing Jill Valentine was so uncomfortable that apparently she came close to walking off set on several occasions. Still, after this long and difficult development cycle, the game was finally ready to be released in 1996. Resident Evil was a revolution when it came out, rocketing the new genre of survival horror into mainstream gaming and solidifying the template that the series would use with such success in the years ahead. Well, at least until Resident 4 came along and changed everything, but that's another story. Resident Evil features a large and complex gaming world to explore, which is gradually accessed by solving puzzles and finding hidden keys in order to open up new areas and progress. Along the way, you have to avoid hidden traps, battle increasingly dangerous enemies, find new weapons and ammunition, and interact with various characters scattered around. You've only got limited carry space, so you have to strike a careful balance between firepower, health items, key items needed to open doors, and quest items to solve puzzles. And that's the important thing that makes Resident Evil so much fun. Balance. Everything is just right. Puzzles and traps were difficult enough to be challenging but never frustrating. Except for the Eagle and Wolfcrest puzzle. How was I supposed to know you could open books up and look inside them? Enemies are a constant drain on your limited ammo, but there are never so many of them that you've become overwhelmed. Boss fights forced you to adapt your playing style and think fast to avoid an early death. The plot's intriguing enough to keep you invested, but it never becomes intrusive. And inventory management forces you to be pragmatic about what you carry, but it feels natural and believable. Your choice of main characters results in a slightly different gaming experience, with Chris generally representing the harder option as he has less powerful weapons and more limited inventory space. He's also not the master of unlocking like Jill, meaning he needs single-use keys to open ammunition drawers. People always say he's able to absorb more damage as compensation for this, but I've completed the game dozens of times with both characters, and I can't say I've noticed much of a difference. Another feature that works extremely well is the branching storylines, resulting in different endings depending on the choices you make throughout the story. I appreciate the way the Resident Evil implements this feature because it does so without you even being aware of it most of the time. For example, early in the game, Barry will suggest splitting up and starting your search of the mansion from the first floor. If you take his advice, he'll be on hand to save you from a nasty collapsing roof trap, increasing your character's trust towards him. If you choose to ignore his suggestion and do your own thing, you'll encounter him in a different part of the mansion, rifling through some paperwork and acting shifty, almost as if he's hiding something. At another point in the game, he lowers you down into a hole, then accidentally drops the rope. Before you can reply with, "It's okay dude, I'll pass it back up to you," he runs off in search of another rope, telling you to wait for him. Now you're free to move onward at this point, but if you choose to hang around for a couple of minutes, he will in fact return with another rope and pull you out. Again, demonstrating trust in him will improve his morale and make him more likely to survive the game. That's the intelligent way this game handles story branches. It doesn't demand you choose a course of action and warn you that it will have far-reaching consequences. It just allows you to go with your instincts and act as you see fit. That being said, Resident Evil does have a few flaws. The control scheme is clunky and difficult to master. Your character is slower to turn than the Titanic, which often results in enemies literally running rings around you. The fixed camera angles make combat problematic as well, like when you enter a new room only to find the camera pointing directly at you, giving you no idea of what may be lurking just outside your field of vision. And as for the voice acting, well, I really can't do it justice in my own words, so I'll just give you a few highlights here and let you make up your own mind.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Jill, have you found anything interesting? It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
There's also a plot twist about one of your number being a double agent and ultimately betraying you near the game's climax, although frankly if you don't see it coming from about 10 miles away then you're probably a character in this game. The general setup is also pretty stupid when you think about it. A trap-filled mansion acting as a front for a secret bioweapons laboratory. Who would set up these traps and why? Wouldn't it be a hazard to the poor people that have to work there on a daily basis? And surely it would harm productivity to lock most of the rooms and scatter the keys all about the building. And yet the strange thing about Resident Evil is that it succeeds because of these flaws rather than despite them. The hammy acting, the cheesy enemies and the dumb as a bag of hammers plot all combine together to create the ultimate guilty pleasure. Resident Evil is a game that just works. It's a game I've happily lost days of my life to, and I'd be prepared to do so all over again more than 20 years after it first released, and not many games can say that. And that concludes part 1 of my Resident Evil retrospective. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and please do hit the like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. It's much appreciated.